Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 218th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We're holding by Parshas Tazria and Metzora. It's another double parsha. Right? Sometimes you can have two parshas during Shabbos to read because you have to finish. There's an obligation to finish the Torah within 1 year. So some parshas are going to be doubled up. One of them is going to be over here. Parshas Tazria Metzora, and Parsha starts by speaking about woman after childbirth, difference between her impurity after she has a male and after she has a female, right? The difference in number of days that she's going to be impure, and then it goes into detail about saras, this affliction that people got when they spoke lashon hara on the body, on the clothing. Later, we see in Parshas Metzora, it speaks about tzaras on the house, right, in the land of Israel, etc. So the Torah tells me, chapter 14, verse 40, when the affliction hits the house, it says the Kohen is going to command they shall remove the stones, contain the affliction, cast them outside the city, onto a contaminated place. So, when the house is afflicted, what do we have? The stones, right? The stones have to be taken out, right? Seemingly the whole, the walls sort of have to be raised, right? But the stones are going to be taken out, sent to a contaminated place, and the Kohen is going to demand, right? That's the case, right? That the stones are going to be taken out. Now, the interesting thing here says Moira Rebbe, Arav Agon Ramosh Torah, this should be well. He brings down in his commentary on Chumash in Tam Vadas, and he brings down a medrash. Now, the medrash says on this verse that both people here have to take out the stones. Right? They're talking about a house, either adjoining someone else's house. Right? That's what it sounds like. So both have to take out the stones over here. So what do we learn? What do we learn from the fact that the houses are adjacent to one another? Someone spoke lashon hara. Now you're going to take out both stones, both people. So my Rebbe here says, we say over here, Oy l'rasha v'oy l'shchein. Woe to the evil person, woe to his neighbor. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, first of all, we're going to stay away from evil people, because they could have an effect on us. Negative effects. We also have to stay away from bad neighbors. Right? So that's one of the things the person's going to check when they move into a place. Right? They're going to check where the neighbors are. Right? You do a little bit of investigative reporting over here, or not reporting, but you're doing a little investigation work. See what the neighbors are like, because you don't want the neighbors to have a negative effect on you, or your spouse, or your kids. So, Rebbe here says, person has to be careful. If a person's in a bad neighborhood, right, that there are people there that are balei lashon hara. Not that they just make a mistake once in a while speaking badly against others. They're habitual speakers of lashon hara. And rechilos. Rechilos meaning talebearing. Reuven, did you hear what Shimon said about you? Right? Forbidden. Right? It's an aspect of lashon hara. You're not allowed to be a talebearer. Right over here in general. So, my Rebbe says that you got to be careful of living in a place where you have people like that. So he says it's better to uproot yourself from such a place and go somewhere else. Because the reality is, if you stay there, then they're going to have a negative influence. Right? They're going to have a negative influence to the extent where a person could get stricken with Sarat. Also, it's fitting to distance yourself from a bad neighbor. If they do things that are an abomination or immorality, or different things, for sure, they're going to have a negative effect on you. And we got to be careful. We got to be careful over here. Now, this is one of the reasons that Jews live in ghettos. That Jews do not live with secular Jews. Meaning, Orthodox Jews stay amongst themselves. So the anti-Semites and Jewish anti-Semites will say, come on, you gotta be like everybody else. It's the way of the world. What, you think everyone's gonna be like you? So we want to be around like-minded people. We want our friends, we want our kids be able to have friends. Be able to, play with other kids in the neighborhood. But if the neighbors are problematic, they could be Orthodox also and be problematic. All the more so if they're secular. Because we don't have the same values. So that is why we stay in our own neighborhoods. We don't want this influence. Because here's my Rebbe says, you got to stay away from an evil neighbor where they're doing all kinds of terrible things. Because they'll have an influence on you. So he says to the extent that if you live in a place where people, your neighbors, are balei lashon hara, all they do all day long, speak badly against others, they don't care. You should uproot yourself from that place. Move somewhere else. So someone's going to say, well, it's not so simple. Got a job here. Got other benefits to live here. But the negative effect can destroy your house. Could destroy your kids. And this is why, by non-Jews who want to convert, they absolutely have to live within walking distance of a synagogue. Now the reason is pretty simple. Because even though Talmud doesn't tell me so, even though the Torah doesn't tell me so, nonetheless, you want to know how to be a Jew, you got to live amongst Jews. Now someone made a comment, and said, but someone's already Jewish, they can live wherever they want. We don't make them live within walking distance. Well, if they want to become an Orthodox Jew, they have to. Just because they live in a place where they're not within walking distance. Now, we're not saying they're not Jewish, obviously, unless, they intermarry or something like that. But they have to move. They also have to move. For a non-Jew coming in, we don't give them the option. We don't give them the option, to live 20 miles away, 15 miles away. That's not an option. You want to be a Jew, you have to know what it means to be a Jew. You have to live within walking distance of a synagogue. Someone who wants to be an Orthodox Jew, even though they live in the middle of nowhere, they also got to move. Right? It's a big misnomer to say, well, we'll cut them a lot of slack. Why? Why would we cut them a lot of slack over here? They're living amongst either secular Jews or non-Jews. So why shouldn't they have to move? But the difference is, you're right, they're Jewish. That is the difference. But they still have to move, so what? What do I care if they live in a place where they're not walking distance? It's just a non-Jew. We're not even going to let them start the conversion process. Beis Din's not even going to really deal with them unless they can move. Because if they can't move, for them, meaning for the rabbinical courts, it shows they're not all that serious. Now, there are other reasons why a person may not be able to move. At the moment. Right? Doesn't mean that's not their goal. Their goal very well may be to move, but they just can't do it now. So that doesn't necessarily mean they're not serious. Doesn't mean that. It just means in the circumstances, they're not able to move. Right? Not something they can do right now. But that has to be the goal. That has to be the end result. Because if not, Beis Din will never deal with you. Because you'll say you're not serious. If you don't live within walking distance. Oh, but you tell me you're not going to say that to a Jew? Of course we will. Why wouldn't we? So what if he lives in the middle of nowhere? He's also going to live within walking distance. So it is true. The person is Jewish, so what? Right? That's seemingly irrelevant. They have to do the same thing. They have to get to the same place as a convert. Proper convert. So now let's talk about the influence. Someone who habitually speaks Lashon Hara, which means they don't really care about what they say. They don't care what the repercussions are. They'll say, I have a right to say it. But being around people like that do not have the same values that we do, or at least not striving to have the same values, they can have a major negative effect on you, on your family. It can have a tremendously negative effect. So someone will say, well, that just means you're weak in your beliefs. And the reality is, it's hard. We have an obligation to stay in the straight and narrow path. To do what God wants at all times. Now, it's not always easy. There are different trials, different tribulations. Evil inclination overcomes us. And we struggle. We struggle in spiritual terms. Because we live in a tremendously impure world. Which we did. Which we made. So, a person can't think, I'm strong in my Yiddishkeit, in my Judaism, I'm going to have a much better effect on them than they'll have on me. Now, it could be up to a point that may be true. But in the end, they can certainly have a negative effect on you. And if a person really can't move, and they're in a bad place, you got to make fences around the Torah. Meaning you don't want to speak to these people that much. You don't want to have your kids come in contact with their kids that much. You say, oh, what, you think you're better? It has nothing to do with thinking we're better or not. What it has to do with is the fact that their influence can have a negative impact. That's the reality. And we in no way, shape, or form want to be part of that. We don't need to be tempted. There's a lot of temptation out there already. We're not interested in any more. But you say, how can you not have contact? So you minimize contact. Because that influence is bad. And we have to realize how bad it is. Because here my Rebbe says, it can be so bad that the only choice you have is to move. Because there's no positive over here. There's a heck of a lot more negative. You have an obligation to guard yourself, guard your family. Because if you don't, the result could be catastrophic. And people will say, oh, you hate secular Jews. You don't have anything to do with them. You're so close-minded. Let me ask, on the other side, how many secular Jews are willing to live in ultra-Orthodox communities? I would venture to say very few, if any. Why? For the same reason, we don't want to live amongst them. We're going to guard ourselves. Make sure they don't have an influence on us. And what do they want? They don't want our influence on them. Or their kids. They just want to be left alone. They want to do whatever they want on Shabbos, on festivals. They don't want this guilt. Or seemingly guilt, where they're walking around and they feel people are looking down on them because they desecrate Shabbos. Or they're not keeping what they need to keep. They don't want to be there. They want to be around people more like them. So why don't we call that being closed-minded? We should. What's the matter? What are you afraid of us? What are we going to do? Give you cooties? What are we going to do? Oh, next thing you know, you'll be trying to force me, to rip toilet paper before Shabbos. Who says we're going to force anyone to do anything? Everyone's got free choice. Come, you go. But there's no reason why a secular Jew would want to live amongst Orthodox Jews. They won't. They have their own stereotypes. They don't want to be with us. Because they think we'll force them to do things. They just want to live a hefker life, a life that's ownerless. Do whatever they want according to their own desires. They don't want to hear this is wrong. You got to keep Shabbos. You got to this. So where's their open-mindedness? Why are they only saying it about us? No one says we should be open-minded. There's good reason why we want to live amongst our own. We share common values. Right? We have a heck of a lot more in common over here. Secular Jews have much more in common with non-Jews. Right? It sounds a little bit harsh, but it's true. What differentiates them? What makes them Jewish at all? They have a bagel once in a while. They celebrate Israel Independence Day. What makes them Jewish? The difference is that in the Orthodox community, we're holding by Torah mitzvahs, doing what God said, listening to what the rabbis tell us. By secular Jews, it's whatever goes, whatever floats your boat within Judaism. To be told what they're doing is wrong, to be told that they may pay a price, they don't want to hear that. They'll say, who are you to say? You're right, I'm nobody to say. The Torah says. Torah makes clear. You can't eat pig. Can't eat shellfish. You have to keep Shabbos. You have to keep festivals. And if you don't, you will pay a price. You definitely will pay a price. Oh, that's your opinion. You're right. That's my opinion based on what the Torah says. Based on what God said to Moshe, Moshe passed down to us. So, secular Jews, in this sense, will be just like us. They want to be around more like-minded people. For them. Does anyone ever say, secular Jews, or secular people want to be among their own, the closed-minded? Probably not. People say you have a right to be around whoever you want. Just because I'm Jewish, I have to hang out with Jews. With Orthodox Jews, who says? But no one is ever going to accuse them in these leftists of being closed-minded. Nobody. This ain't free choice. And you can't force me. True? Very, very true. But the issue is that called something or someone that's open-minded? And I would say no. Because if they were really open-minded, they wouldn't care living amongst us. Or someone told me once, you're so close-minded, you wouldn't send your kids to university, let them expand their minds, their horizons. So I said, okay, I'd be willing to send my kids to university, and you send your boys to yeshiva. Oh, I would never do that. They're going to be brainwashed. They're going to be this, going to be that. So where's the open-mindedness? So now this is different. They're going to try and do these things to you, blah, blah, blah. Well, what about in the secular world? Don't they try and convince you things in university? Break down what you believe? What, the values are so good in university, I should send my kids there? Is it really going to be that someone who goes to university, they'll come out exactly the same, if not better, spiritually? Right, within Judaism? I don't think so. I don't believe that's ever going to happen. Unless, living on campus, you make fences and fences and fences around the Torah. That's how you do it. Otherwise, it would seemingly be an impossibility. Right, but we want to protect our spirituality. Sending them to a place like that, there are men and women together, the values are different, all kinds of immorality going on. Why in the world would a person risk that? Right, the secular Jews say, but you're closed-minded. See, but they have the stereotype that they're going to get brainwashed and send them to yeshiva. Right? Brainwashing is not such a bad thing. Getting your brain squeegeed out from all the garbage that's in it. Definitely not a bad thing. But we have to realize this is not about how open-minded I have to be. This is about preserving and protecting the Torah. Because if I don't do that, and it's all hefker, it's all ownerless, then someone being put in that environment, unless they're very, very, very strong, they don't have a chance. They will be influenced in some way, in a negative way. Impossible not to. Now, what about people who do outreach? right? And they're people that live on college campuses and this and that. Okay, so usually they do it when their kids are very young. Kids are older, they don't do it. Even Chabad, who does this, they send their kids out, right, at a certain age. Right, because they can't have the influence. The influence will destroy. That's not just being, closed-minded. It's being practical. Judaism is supposed to be preserved. It's supposed to survive. If we make it ownerless, people do whatever they want, it will not survive. That's why you have, 12, 13 million Jews don't know anything. Because they're so ownerless, everything goes except learning about their own religion. And most of these people are falling off the face of the map spiritually. The Rebbe here says, and it's good advice. He doesn't need me to agree. But it's good advice. Being in that type of an environment has the power to corrupt a person. Has the power to have a negative influence. Could the person have more of a positive influence on others? Could be. Could very well be. But unless a person is absolutely careful and they put fences and fences and fences around the Torah, they're not going to come out 100% the way they were before. It's an impossibility. You got to be really, really, really strong. And that's why a person's going to do outreach in these type of places. Then either you have to be much older or much younger. Doesn't work. If you have older kids or whatever. It's not going to work. There'll be much more negative influence. To the extent where a person can end up getting tzaras. Right in this case. Because you're not careful enough. And you fell. This is what can happen. Because the impurity sticks like glue. To be impure, all you have to do is touch it. Alright, touch a dead animal, become impure. Oh, but you want holiness? Holiness you got to absorb. Holiness takes a heck of a lot more time. So being around others that habitually speak Lashon Hara or do other things, their negative influence is only by touch. You would have to work a lot harder for them to absorb holiness. Doesn't mean it can't happen. But who's to say a person goes out and comes out the same? If not better. That seemingly is not going to happen. And that's the danger. And that's why we stay amongst our own. We don't want to veer off too much. Because if we veer off too much, it's a disaster. Then you open yourself up to all kinds of things, and these ideas, things you saw, become part of you, and it becomes that much more difficult to fight. Once something is to a person like second nature, it's bad. Because if a person does the wrong thing, then they do it again, they do it a third time, it's part of you. Once something is part of you, almost impossible to fight against. Well, I'm not going to say impossible. It's hard. It's very, very difficult. Right? So what do we do? What do we do over here? To the best of our ability, we don't put ourselves in that situation. Because in my language, if you do, you are setting yourself up to be distracted. and you'll set yourself up for failure. I want to remind everyone, I have a class every Tuesday, 9 o'clock New York time, on Duties of the Heart, Chovos HaLevavos. I have 2 Q&As every Tuesday, Thursday, 10 o'clock New York time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Class on the book of Leviticus every Sunday, 9 o'clock New York time, 4 o'clock Israel time. I also have conversion classes. I do Tanakh Talk every Monday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock Israel time. Pirkei Avos every Saturday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, and 9 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has questions on any of that, find me on Facebook, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, REBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com.